say they found multiple weapons in the gunman's vehicle. The suspect has been identified as 26-year-old Devin Patrick Kelly from neighboring Comal County. Much of what's known about him comes from an Air Force spokeswoman. She says he was court-martialed in 2012 on 2 charges of assaulting his spouse and their child. He was confined for a year, reduced in rank, and given a bad conduct discharge in 2014. That raises immediate questions about how he might have been able to obtain a firearm. Business Insider says his violent history should have prevented him from purchasing a gun. According to CNN, Kelly brought the weapon in April of 2016, 2 years after he received a bad conduct discharge in 2014. The report, citing a law enforcement official, says that when he filled out the background check paperwork, he checked the box to indicate he did not have any disqualifying criminal history. Meanwhile, during a joint press briefing overnight with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, President Trump was asked what policies he might support in response to the shooting, and here's how he responded.
I think that mental health is your problem here. This was a very, based on preliminary reports, very deranged individual, a lot of problems over a long period of time. We have a lot of mental health problems in our country, as do other countries. But this isn't a guns situation. I mean, we could go into it, but it's a little bit soon to go into it. But fortunately, somebody else had a gun that was shooting in the opposite direction. Otherwise, it would have been as bad as it was. It would have been much worse. But this is a mental health problem at the highest level. It's a very, very sad event. These are great people and a very, very sad event. But that's the way I view it.
You know, it's interesting that within hours of the attack this past week in New York City, not only had Donald Trump called it an act of terrorism, he had started attacking within 24 hours, Clint, he had started attacking Chuck Schumer and had said we have to pass new legislation to make our extreme vetting even more extreme. He ridiculed what is really the crown jewel of America's constitutional system, and that is our judicial system. And you could go on and on and on, but again, it's almost like he's talking like he's a robot that's been fed a chip by somebody when he says this is a mental health issue, this is not a, like that's what they are. Right. It's just, it's almost like he's a robot repeating that when this just lines up as yet another, 5 of the deadliest shootings in U.S. history have happened, over the past decade, and I think 3 of the past 5 have happened over the past year. They just, these are accelerating.
Yeah, and it's clear. Right? Everyone that is interested in perpetrating an attack like this learns from the other one. It's a very simple strategy. You go and acquire a weapon. As we saw, the procedures we had in place to prevent someone, that's been incarcerated from gaining a weapon did not work. That was never going to work. Anybody that is determined to get a weapon in the United States can. We see a very consistent pattern over and over. And when the president talks about this issue, he quickly determines someone's a terrorist and makes somewhat bold leaps and conclusions within hours, but then it's always too soon to discuss this problem on a grander scale. There's one commonality amongst all of these, and that is assault weapons are being used repeatedly to do mass killings. That gentleman yesterday was dressed up in basically the exact gear I wore as a brand new lieutenant when I entered the Army. We have people that can outgun our law enforcement, and weapons are proliferating everywhere. And so he says mentally disturbed. A lot of terrorists are mentally disturbed as well, and that doesn't break down why we're not working more aggressively.
Well, and we've talked about background checks time and time again, and Herald after Las Vegas, we talked about background checks needing, and we've talked about it since Sandy Hook, we need to have a more effective, a more comprehensive background check. I mean, here, if it got, and after Las Vegas, I said, what's wrong with expanding background checks to make sure people that have beaten up their wives, or husbands, or their children, can't get a gun? Why can't we expand it to make sure we do that? And here you have a guy, all he had to do was check off a box. What do you expect? What do you expect? Yes, a felon is going to lie. If he wants to get a gun and assault and slaughter people, he's going to lie so he can get a military-style weapon, and that's exactly what happened here. And it happened in church. And I know you grew up in Mississippi, you grew up in Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Northwest Florida. I grew up going to churches like this with friends. And it's the last place in the world you'd expect this terror.
Look, you and Clint touched on it well. We all know how hasty and irresponsible this president can be with his remarks. But two things stand out. One, after the Las Vegas shooting, there seemed to be a movement to go after this device you could put on a gun to make the gun illegal. And it seems somehow that momentum is completely stopped, and the president, for some reason, doesn't see that as being helpful. Two, this guy lied on this form here. There has to be some way in which you can verify very quickly whether or not these answers these people are giving on these background checks purchasing guns are accurate. They have to wait an additional 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. That seems to be reasonable. Shame on the president for not. Shame on the president for a lot of things, but on this more to be overseas and to say we care about these people and this is terrible what has happened, but this is just mental health is the problem.
Well, and to say mental health,
to say that only is the problem. Clint's point, the commonality in all of this is one thing: an assault weapon. There are a lot of people who unfortunately suffer from mental health issues, but they don't have guns on them. And if you keep guns out of the hands of people who are mentally ill, at least we can prevent innocent people from being killed as they wait to be treated for their mental illness.
Well, the president's saying, Elise, that this is not about guns, that it's about mental health, is like somebody saying after one drunk driving accident after another, this is not about alcohol, this is about real heavy cars.
That seems like an answer that the NRA would appreciate. This is a president who appreciates that the NRA chose to be loyal to him very early in the primary process. He has witnessed himself the enormous political power of the NRA, how much money and just how much votes that they can drive from their very robust membership. And I think that Donald Trump definitely is under the sway of the gun lobby. I think that assault weapons clearly are the problem here that is causing so much destruction. But I think that there's a second part, and that is that men who are abusing women, abusing children, abusing animals, nearly 9 times out of 10 in these cases, they have committed this kind of abuse in their previous life. And so we have to do a better job of keeping these guns out of the hand of abusers.
Well, and what's so fascinating is that when you say we need expanded background checks, Mika, then I've heard Lindsey Graham and I've heard others parroting the NRA line saying, well, but background checks don't work. This background check system doesn't work. Which again, that's why we need a better background check system. Like, all of your arguments are circular. Like, for instance, a couple of people have talked about assault weapons. I know what you're saying. Oh, but assault weapons were banned in 1933 and they don't know anything about guns. So then they could say semi-automatic weapons. But then you go, oh, really? Well, the pistol I have in my house is a semi-automatic weapon. So now you're coming for my pistols. There's circular arguments, and you all say it to yourself. Well, the rest of America grows more and more horrified. Yeah. And Elise, that NRA membership, something like last poll I saw, 75% of NRA members, and certainly everybody I knew growing up in Alabama and Mississippi and Northwest Florida are like, okay, my dad got me a shotgun when I was 5, and that's a part of our lives, but we've never gone out with AR-style weapons to shoot deer. And that's what I'm just saying. That's why 75% of NRA members, by a poll I saw not so long ago, want increased background checks. A lot of them don't want these military-style weapons out there. That's not the majority of even law-abiding NRA members.
I grew up in Missouri. My grandfather taught me to shoot a rifle the first time. There was a process in these families to actually train people to use this. I went to a range this past year to go shooting. Watched a guy walk in, pick up a weapon, just start shooting, almost shot through the ceiling. Has had no instruction, has bought a very dangerous weapon, has taken it out of the case and started shooting. This gentleman here, or any of them that we've seen in recent recent cases, they get the same weapon I got when I was in the military, where I used to have to carry it around for weeks before I could even put a bullet into it.
Right.
Had to go through formalized training or picking this stuff up right off the shelf and going and employing it against other Americans. And that's not, I keep hearing America first out of this president. America first would be taking care of Americans. I've not seen him put forth anything that's taking care of Americans. And this has happened 3-4 times just in the last month.
Anybody that's grown up in a household with guns, including the Brzezinskis,
Deer hunters.
deer hunters, everybody, I mean, you know, and everybody I knew in the Deep South, Nick, that I grew up around, and again, their father or the grandfather got them a gun when they're 5, 6, 7, and hunting is a big part of their life, especially in the fall. Those people are the most responsible and the most extreme in a good way when it comes to gun safety. Like they keep them locked up. No, son, no, you don't do it. No, daughter, you don't do it that way. This is how you do it. But like Clint said, like all of them are so, everyone that I ever met that grew up and that was a part of their life, so responsible. But here you have a very small percentage of people that want to have the freedom, everybody have freedom to go out and get a military-styled weapon that the people that get them are not prepared to get, and that the police can't even match with firepower.
That's right. Look, the mainstream gun culture is mainstream. Safety is important. It's not people who are stockpiling 30 weapons, buying 3 variations of the AR-15.
Right.
But the NRA functionally is a trade organization for weapons manufacturers, and their job is to sell more guns. I suspect if you could see behind the books of that group, you would see a lot of money kind of swashing around from gun makers. That's why we have these ritual panics about gun takebacks or confiscation,
Buybacks.
right? Because the goal is to sell more guns, and they've already sold as many guns
There's
as they
so
possibly
many
can,
out there.
and they have to sell more and more to the small number of people who want to have arsenals.
Right.
But we're rapidly converging, especially on the Republican side of the aisle, on what seems to me a strange worldview, which is that a felon should not be allowed to vote, but should be allowed to buy a weapon.
Yeah.
It's a complicated issue, there's no doubt, but for those who say after every shooting, which is practically every day, and mass shooting practically every month, if not twice a month, oh, it's too soon, oh, it's too soon. Really? We're not safe at school, we're not safe in church, we're not safe at concerts. Like, exactly when can we have this conversation? You're cowards.
Yeah,
We're going to be following this story
not safe. You know,
all morning long.
I want to say one other thing,
And we
too.
will be talking about
Just
it.
before we get out of the first block, I really hope the media, as you see the pace, and I'd be really curious before we go to the break to get Clint's input here, the pace of these are quickening. And obviously this shooter, I'm sure this shooter saw what happened in Las Vegas. We have got to stop, as members of the media, revealing the names of these mass shooters. I want to know I want to know their background. I want to know whether, you know, why they did it. But Clint, it makes no sense, especially in this era of copycat mass shooting. It makes no sense for the media to get somebody's name, put their picture there, the Las Vegas shooter for 3 weeks. Who is he? What was he? What motivated him? It's such, no.
That's a good debate as well.
Doesn't the cable media culture, doesn't the talk radio culture, doesn't the online culture that obsess over these shooters, don't they just create more mass shooters in the future?
Yeah, you're taking a nobody and making them somebody for the first time mostly in their afterlife. And what we tend to see, and I think one of the first times I was on this show, we were talking about the contagion effect, cascading violence that comes from this. People that are on the fence or have been thinking about this, when they see the constant media attention, they gravitate towards it. And what we've seen now is it's almost not even a contagion or an outbreak. It's just consistent. It's constant. And it's always too soon to talk about it. Yeah. But the next attack is happening so soon we could never start talking about it. That's by that logic. It is every 1 to 2 weeks. It's
cowardly.
We are seeing this. And we have low trained, no background checks, high capacity weapons that are being bought and used just at large, and it's just, I don't know at what point, how many of these will we need to have in a month? Is it 6 or 7 before our legislators, before our leaders step up and do something?
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.